When we asked you, the overwhelming response was to do a comparison of the OnePlus Nord 3 against the OnePlus 11R. So without wasting any time, let's get right down to the comparison and find out if you should save some money on the Nord 3 or actually spend some more and get the 11R instead. If you are here for the very first time, I am Ershad. You're watching Trakin Tech English, your place for detailed, incisive gadget reviews. Now let's tackle the first major difference between both these phones, and that is the system on chip. Essentially on the Nord 3 you get the MediaTek Dimensity 9000, whereas on the 11R you get the Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1. Now both the phones have LPDDR5 RAM and UFS 3.1 storage, and at least on paper the Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1 is touted to be more powerful compared to the Dimensity 9000, especially in GPU performance, but we ran some tests. So the Antutu score is higher on the OnePlus 11R. And in our Geekbench test, what we noticed is that the single core score on the Dimensity 9000 is higher than the single core score of the Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1, but the multi-core scores were evenly matched. So the Dimensity 9000 is definitely no slouch. But when we ran all our tests in the high performance mode that you get within Oxygen OS, the 11R doesn't throttle as much as the Nord 3, which is very evident from the CPU throttle stability scores that you can see on your screen right now. In fact, even when we ran the 3D Mark Wildlife stress test, the GPU stability is higher on the 11R compared to the Nord 3. That's not it. The 11R runs cooler compared to the Nord 3. This despite the fact that you get higher frame rates on the 11R. Now we've also started a new test where we play Genshin Impact for 30 minutes straight and figure out what the average frame rates are. So on the Nord 3 I got 57 FPS, whereas on the 11R it went up to 58.7 average FPS. But more importantly, the battery temperature after the 30-minute session was 38 degrees on the 11R and 40 degrees on the Nord 3. In fact, the device temperature was recorded as 44.2 degrees on the 11R and 47.9 on the Nord 3. Evidently, the 11R has a powerful GPU which stays stable even for long gaming sessions, and apart from that, it doesn't even get as hot as the Nord 3. And the thermal efficiency actually impacts the battery life as well. On the 11R, I easily got about 6 to 7 hours of screen on time. On the Nord 3, I am barely pushing 5 hours. And apart from that, on the 11R, you have slightly faster charging speeds of 100 watt compared to 80 watt on the Nord 3. So the 11R takes about 25 minutes for a full charge, whereas the Nord 3 takes 34 minutes. I'm not really concerned about that extra charging speed that you get with the 11R, but the battery life is better, and that's what matters. Therefore, when you're looking at performance and battery life, the 11R is better than the Nord 3. That's for sure. There are tangible benefits that you can see for yourself. By the way, on a parallel note, I really want to mention this. These are performance-oriented phones, but still use a Type-C port with USB 2.0 speeds, which is a bit of a letdown. Alright, let's talk about the network performance. You get Wi-Fi 6 support and NFC support on both these phones, so that's not really a problem. And with respect to 5G performance, N77, N78 bands are of course supported. There are a lot of 5G band support on both the phones. So Airtel and Jio 5G work absolutely fine, but more importantly, the call quality on both these devices is fantastic. By the way, talking about calls, I know that a lot of you guys want to record calls without alerting the person on the other side. That's not going to be possible without you having to install the O-Dialer app, because on these phones you get the Google Dialer app. But let me tell you guys one thing, if you are recording somebody's call, please take their permission first. That's very important. Alright, let's talk about the camera setup and the camera performance, and OnePlus has played a really smart move this time. The Nord 3 actually has the same camera setup as the OnePlus 11R. So you get the same 50MP Sony IMX890 sensor with optical image stabilization. You get an 8MP ultrawide, 2MP macro and a 16MP selfie camera. But since the SoC is different, the image signal processor is also going to be different, so we can tell a difference in camera performance if there's going to be any, especially considering the fact that you've got the same algorithm running on both. First things first, the algorithm on the Nord 3 tends to over-sharpen finer details more than the 11R, but both do look crisp and sharp nonetheless. Color and contrast is incredibly better on the 11R compared to the Nord 3. Nord 3 makes brighter, more punchier looking images, which looks attractive no doubt, but it is definitely not natural looking. Now if you look at the reds in my Jordan 1, it looks pink on the Nord 3, which is a clear indicator that the color tuning algorithm wasn't done properly on the Nord 3. HDR performance is generally good on both the phones. Now when you look at this complex image, Nord 3 is particularly good at controlling the highlights, but the 11R is more proficient in bringing out more details from the shadows and reducing the noise. Overall, the 11R's HDR has a slight upper hand. Now when you're shooting friends and family, the 11R's skin tones are close to natural looking. It also doesn't mess up the color of the shirt or the tree in the background. The Nord 3 actually doesn't match up when it comes to skin tones. And against the light, when you're shooting friends and family, the Nord 3's bright image does look good. The whole scene here is just very colorful and cheery, but the 11R gets the HDR tuning spot on, even if Arnav is slightly underexposed as a result. What I mean to say here is that the 11R's pictures are almost a very close representation of what my eyes really saw as compared to the Nord 3, which definitely is too bright and cheery for my taste. But the Nord 3 behaves completely differently in portrait mode. It feels like OnePlus hired a set of extra camera engineers for just better looking portrait shots. Anyway, the edge cutout is fantastic on the Nord 3. In fact, I do like the gradual blur slightly better on the Nord 3 compared to the OnePlus 11R. Now, the low light performance is equally matched on both the phones in terms of exposure and details. The only difference is in the colors these phones reproduce, but otherwise technicalities are the same, which actually is great for the Nord 3 considering the fact that it's doing great low light performance at a lower cost. Now, the ultra-wide angle 8MP cameras on both the phones are equally wide at 120 degrees and they get equally sharp too. But there's no color sense consistency between the primary and the ultra-wide angle cameras on both the phones. And finally, you can't really spot the difference in the ultra-wide low-light shots either. You can take a look for yourself. Now, the 2MP macro camera pictures are 2MP macro camera pictures. They look okay. Now, when you're looking at selfies using both the phones, they are equally matched. But the 11R offers better skin tones that are closer to my actual skin color. Portrait selfies look equally good when it comes to the edge detection and the blur effect that has been added. And in low light, the selfies are brighter on the Nord 3, but sharper on the 11R. I think sharper, well-exposed selfies do look better. Video recording quality using the primary camera on the 11R is undoubtedly better. You get stabilization even at 4K 60 FPS, whereas there's no stabilization OIS plus EIS on the Nord 3 at 4K video recording. You also get better sound recording quality on the 11R. Having said that, the HDR performance in video recording seems to be slightly better on the Nord 3. Don't you think so? Alright, so now we're shooting a video at 4K 60 FPS using the OnePlus Nord 3 and the OnePlus 11R. Alright, so now we're shooting a video at 4K 60 FPS using the OnePlus Nord 3 and the OnePlus 11R. In low-light 4K 60 FPS videos, the quality is incredibly better on the 11R compared to the Nord 3, which you can see for yourself. Now, ultra-wide-angle video recording tops out at 1080p 30 FPS. I noticed added sharpness and contrast in the Nord 3 footage, which makes it look good, but sound recording is better on the 11R. The 1080p 30 FPS selfie video recording quality, the skin tones, the sound quality is all slightly better on the 11R, but both don't offer EIS. You know, after using these phones, I feel that the Nord 3's cameras are tuned towards the target audience, which would probably prefer more cheerful, brighter, punchier looking images. The 11R's results are slightly more professional looking in comparison, and I do like the fact that 11R's camera performance has improved since I first tested it at launch. This is a good job, OnePlus. But this camera comparison is proof that just good hardware performance is not enough. You also need well-tuned camera algorithms. Which is why you should always watch a Trakin Tech English video before making a purchase decision, because you will get exactly that, the camera algorithm tested. And for that, you need to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon to get a notification whenever we put out an awesome new tech video. Now, the other major difference apart from the internal SoC is the external design. Now, when you look at the 11R, you see that the industrial design is the same as the OnePlus 11. You've got this nice circular camera module. You've got a glass back, a Gorilla Glass 5 back, which blends into plastic frame. In comparison, the Nord 3 has plastic sides, Gorilla Glass 5 at the back, but more importantly, it has a boxier design. The Nord 3 definitely feels lighter and slimmer compared to the OnePlus 11R. But with the 11R, when you hold it, you get this very premium and dense feeling phone, which just feels like it's a more expensive phone, and you can tell that when you hold the phones in the hand. Now, you get an alert slider on both, but no headphone jack or wireless charging. That's something you have to keep in mind. And surprisingly, the Nord 3 actually has IP54 rating, which the 11R doesn't. Now, as far as the functional aspects of the design go, there's not much separating the two. Now, you guys decide which look do you prefer. Do you like the Nord 3 or the OnePlus 11R? Now, talking about the display on both these phones, you get the exact same tech specifications. Basically, both these phones have a 6.74-inch Fluid AMOLED 1.5K display with 10-bit support and HDR10 Plus support as well. And of course, the displays can reach a peak brightness of 1450 nits, which is very bright for regular usage. And display quality, when I tested them side by side, is more or less the same. You get the same professional mode with the DCI-P3 color gamut that you can switch on. So color accuracy is nearly good. And the HDR performance is very good too. You get good control over the shadows and the highlights. It's the good kind of premium HDR tuning that you get with these OnePlus phones. Haptic feedback, both of these have O haptics, so the haptic feedback is tuned very well. You can't really tell the difference between the two. And apart from that, in-display fingerprint scanners are also present on both the phones. Very fast to unlock, no complaints there. The touch sensitivity is also very good, so if you're somebody who likes to play a lot of games, you shouldn't have a problem with it. Really, there's very little to tell the two apart when it comes to the display, except for two things. Firstly, OnePlus says that the Nord 3 has Dragon Trail glass protection. I really still don't know if there is any glass protection on top of the 11R. But secondly, and more importantly, the 11R has a curved panel as opposed to the flat panel on the Nord 3. Now, in the debate between curved panels and flat panels, I'm firmly in the flat panel camp, primarily because curved panels, when you drop the phone, they have the tendency of shattering first. And apart from that, ghost touches are not entirely avoidable either. And sometimes, when you're playing games, certain UI elements also do get cut out in curved panels or, get into the curve so you cannot really touch them easily. So yeah, I generally prefer flat panels. What do you guys prefer? Let me know in the comment section below. Now, to close the multimedia loop is the stereo speaker performance. You do get Dolby Atmos support on both the phones. Now, when you listen to the audio quality side by side, they get equally loud. But I did notice that the 11R was slightly richer and had a slightly denser sound. Why don't you take a listen for yourself and let me know what you guys think. Now let's talk about the software on both these phones. Of course, the Nord 3 is the first phone to come with OxygenOS 13.1 based on Android 13. OxygenOS 13 is what is running on the OnePlus 11R, and the 13.1 update should come really soon. And both these phones have also been promised 3 years of software updates and 4 years of security updates as well. So those are evenly matched too. OxygenOS, if you looked at it, of course, it has morphed over the years and now it is based on ColorOS code base, but it looks very slick and the animations are good too. There's no real bloatware as such except for the first party Oppo internet browser, which you can disable if you want. Obviously, the software experience is great on both. There's nothing really telling the two apart, and it's very premium. It's fitting for phones that cost upwards of rupees 30,000. Now, after using both these phones side by side, I am convinced that the 11R is definitely a slightly better deal compared to the Nord 3. Primarily because for a few extra thousands, you get better performance, better thermal efficiency, better camera performance as well, and apart from that, better battery life too. All of these are very important parameters when you're planning on buying a phone. Now, you might be swayed by the fact that the Nord 3 16GB, 256GB variant is available for the same price of the base variant of the 11R, which is the 8 128GB variant. And trust me, don't be swayed by that fact. The 11R is a better deal. On the whole, I feel that the Nord 3 would have been a way better deal if the pricing was slightly more aggressive. Right now, it feels like a OnePlus 11R Lite with a few compromises that you have to contend with. So for all the OnePlus 11R users, you can breathe a sigh of relief. Your phone is definitely better than the Nord 3. Alright, what do you guys think of this comparison? Let me know in the comment section below. And do also let me know if you're planning on buying one. I'll see you guys in the next one. Until then, keep tracking and stay safe.